And we are live.
Okay. Matthias, did you click the live button? Okay, we're live now, I think.
Yes. Hey, good morning, everyone. People are still joining, so we will wait for like a minute or two for everyone to join. On the right side, you of course have the chat where you can have a live discussion with us. There is a little delay, so it might be a bit awkward sometimes because we'll take some time to respond. But yeah.
Maybe can everyone confirm that they are hearing us? Please use the chat, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let us know
that you're hearing us correctly.
On the left side, you have like a small icon of the chat. That's how you open the chat.
Yeah, upper left corner, there's the chat icon, and then you get a chat.
But that's our internal chat. Yeah, okay, they can hear us. Confirm. Yeah, there is a little delay, so I was anxious if you can hear us. Okay, I guess we have like 14 people watching, so let's go with the webinar. So welcome everyone. I'm Paweł, and today joining me is Peter from Concuria and also Mateusz from Concuria.
Hello, guys.
The two amazing guys who basically almost on their own tackle this great task of building new front end. We are just we as Sylius, we are just providing some input on like what kind of functionality we have in Sylius already, and what are our roadmap plans, and what is the big vision for Sylius's e-commerce solution. So today webinar will focus on this effort that Peter and Mateusz have been working on for the last couple of months, basically building new Sylius frontend. And the rough agenda is that Peter will present you with the project, like what we have done, why we did it, what's the current status, and the way to move forward from our perspective. Then I will give you just a brief overview of like Sylius core development perspective. So why we are also involved in this effort, why we want to get Sylius frontend to the next level, and basically what's the current state of frontend in Sylius, also from our perspective, and the direction that we are taking in general. So going more towards headless e-commerce and being a true e-commerce framework. And then Mateusz will probably do the most interesting part, so the demo. He will show you the wireframes and the prototype, and also like the final design that we have at this point, and also a bit on how to customize it. The final point of the agenda is basically open discussion with you. So we have a couple of topics about progressive web app versus multiple page, standard multiple page application, about view storefront, GraphQL, and a couple of other topics which are strictly related to this effort, so that we can have a productive and interesting discussion and get some new opinions, new ideas on how to move forward with this effort. Yeah, so that's roughly, and of course, finally, we'll also pitch you why it makes sense from your perspective as a developer or as business owner to get involved into this effort and help us finalize it so that Sylius gets a completely brand new front end this year. So yeah, that would be roughly the agenda, and I'm passing the mic to Peter, who will introduce you to the project.
Okay, guys. So thank you for joining the webinar. This project was initiated by me and then Matthias, because we saw that there was a great need for it. Current demo is lacking any UX reasoning at all. It's done by developers based on what's available in the API. So what is this effort? It's supposed to be, or it has to be a reference implementation that makes it easier to onboard new developers and easier to bootstrap new Sylius shops without redoing the basic UX research for common generalized UX patterns. So we also want to ship design source files and UX reasoning with the demo, because often in many open source systems you get some kind of theme shipped with the product, but the actual design source files or the UX reasonings, they are often not shipped with it. We are doing the entire design in Figma because it's platform agnostic and it's easy for collaborating with many collaborators. It's fully browser based, so it has a lot of advantages over the alternatives from Adobe or Sketch. Another thing that we want to put forward with this demo is make it easier for agencies and developers to pitch Sylius to clients. So if you have design source files and you can take the logo, the colors, and some products from the clients, and you can put together a nice looking pitch, that's a great head start for making quotes and providing appealing pitches. Also, it needs to be a good first impression. When somebody lands on the Sylius homepage and they go check out the demo, they should have a bit of a wow feeling. It shouldn't look as it currently looks. That's why it's tucked away quite good at the moment, but we should probably give it a little bit more of exposure once this effort is done. So easy onboarding, getting a reference implementation, shipping design source files and UX reasoning, and providing a fancy demo that can serve for client pitches, and a good first impression. Then why we did it? I mentioned this already. So the current demo has no UX reasoning, and we also want something that is easy to bootstrap new Sylius shops. So if you want to bootstrap a new Sylius shop, you should be able to get it up and running quick and have an out-of-the-box UX experience that serves just like Sylius does in the backend. Sylius is a modular system that has everything split out into separate modules, and these modules together form a very nice coherent e-commerce system. And in the front end, we want to do the same. We want to provide a modular approach, and we want to provide UX UI for the 60, 70, 80% of UX patterns, e-commerce patterns that can be generalized. So we shied in the demo. We shied away from specific UX patterns that can be generalized. So that just like Sylius is doing, is not trying to provide every feature for every client. This demo should not try to provide every feature for every client. So we want to provide a solid base with deliverables that can be used by agencies for further iteration. And we also want to continue working with plugin developers, with the entire ecosystem. If you have a plugin that has an impact on the front-end UX UI, we'd be happy, for example, to put our effort into designing UX UI that can fit into the demo. So you can install the plugin without worrying that it won't fit into the front-end stack or in the demo. So it's a two-step approach. UX UI for the 60-70% that can be generalized, and then additional UX UI efforts in collaboration with the community for specific plugins or what have you. The current status, so the UX UI research, it has been done for 80 to 90%, but it's a moving target. So we plan to continue iterating on this. We also welcome everyone to join. It's done in 2 Trello boards for now. One Trello board that is focused on UX UI, and another Trello board that is focused on developer UX and front-end implementation techniques that make it feel like it's a very fast system. So the single-page application and service workers and skeleton screens. So everything that makes it so that the user has the feeling that it's working very swiftly. We'll get to this in the follow-up of this webinar. The design system, we have been evaluating many design systems. We've been evaluating Carbon design from IBM. the design system from Predix, which is from General Electric, and the new Material 2.0 design system from Google, recently released in the aftermath of Google I/O. We've chosen the new Material design system because it has easy adapters for Angular, Vue, React, native web components, and Vanilla.js from the same source base. So that's beneficial for whenever some agency wants to take the demo and, for example, their development team requires going full in on, let's say, React, not my choice of preference, but if that's the choice made by the client or by the skills of the front-end team, the new Material 2.0 design system is well fit to easily switch to a different tech stack if needed. So the next thing we're at now is choosing the front-end tech stack. So assembling a team of developers from partner agencies, freelance developers, everyone that wants to join the effort. But the pitch on joining the effort will come at the end of the presentation. So that's roughly what, why, and the current status of the project. I'll pass it over to Pavel now again to give you the perspective from the Sylius side where they are heading.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So I agree with pretty much everything you have said. And from Sylius' perspective, it looks very similar. I would add that we want to be a framework. So like Peter said, we want to solve like the 70 or 80% of the problem of the e-commerce challenges that can be generalized. And then we focus on projects that we call them impactful e-commerce organizations. So companies who are not starting with e-commerce or are not running rather small scale operations, but the ones that have a bit more significant online revenues and this also usually means that they also have bigger expectation and requirements when it comes to customization. So what we are doing on the backend now, we want to make it happen on the front end side as well. We as Sylius, we always had much more backend competency and capacity rather than front end. We are catching up on that. We are hiring a front end developer right now, but generally we feel much stronger on the backend side, and I think it's clearly visible because I think the reason why companies choose Sylius right now is the tech stack on the backend. Front end is something that they usually throw out to trash and build their own custom solution. And building a custom solution for these companies I mentioned with like at least 1 million plus revenue annually, it makes total sense. But we want to also reduce the cost and effort needed to make that custom design happen. So as Peter said, we want to have e-commerce framework on the front end side as well, where you can take the design. It's not like we don't want to become a CMS. E-commerce CMS. By e-commerce CMS, I understand, like PrestaShop or WordPress or kind of Magento. It depends on which customer it is, but some we don't want to have like click to install plugins. We want to make plugin installation as easy as possible, but for the developers, so that they can reduce the effort needed to implement some custom functionality or to integrate in ERP, CRM, or any other integration. So we want to focus on them, on the ease of installation, but still from the command line interface, basically. I think that makes much more sense to for the projects that we are targeting, rather than advertising that, yeah, you can click to install and have this ERP integration, where it doesn't really work like that for this scale of project. For small e-commerce, totally makes sense. Go for Shopify probably. Unless it's a small e-commerce site that is being done as a separate, like a side project or new venture by a bigger organization, and we can expect that it will grow fast. So then even if it's a small B2C store, it makes sense to use Sylius because the expectations and the requirements may grow very fast. But otherwise, I would say Sylius is not a good choice for the first or very small scale e-commerce. And the current state of the front end, I take the blame for the lack of UX reasoning on the front end side, because I was mostly involved in choosing semantic UI and and assembling the user interface that we have right now. And we always treated it as a kind of prototype for us to develop a solid backend to have a front end that we can test. But like Peter said, there is very little to no UX reasoning. Some of the logic spills to the front end, unfortunately. That's basically due to the nature of backend rendered websites, like multiple page applications, where still some backend tools like Symfony Forms in a way influence the way we have to implement front end, or basically we assume that's the way to do it, and the front end is done with Symfony Forms. Yeah, and generally, why this front end effort, and considering using something like Vue Storefront, or generally building a progressive web app, is in line with our direction, because we are leaning more and more towards being more headless e-commerce. So we've put a strong focus now on the APIs, and also like capturing the e-commerce, this e-commerce domain that can be generalized, this 70 to 80% of e-commerce challenges. And then like the interface through which you interact with this domain is kind of secondary. So a rough idea that we have in mind right now is that Sylius moving forward would become API first e-commerce framework with a headless approach. There are some sites built with this approach already using the Shop API plugin, but we also want to keep the ability to do the standard tweak rendering. And I think with good architecture that we have in place, it's still possible, so that there is a smooth upgrade path moving forward, and it's not like you need to completely throw out your 1.0 applications to upgrade to 2.0 in the future. So we're keeping in mind this, even though we want to make some bold steps when it comes to the front end and API approach in Sylius. So generally, that would be what I can add to the discussion. And I think we'll have plenty of space to discuss more in the last part of the webinar. And now I will let Mateusz to present the demo. I think the most interesting part of the presentation. So thanks.
Yeah, hello guys. So my name is Mateusz, and I'm a product designer at Concuria, and I had the pleasure to design the UX and UI part of the new Sylius demo. So firstly, we wanted to keep the demo really simple. So it has all those well-known patterns from e-commerce platforms like Zalando, Amazon, Allegro.pl, Coolblue.be, and so on. It is really difficult to estimate what users will be using our demo, so the safest option here was to create something easy to use and having tried solutions. And secondly, we wanted to make the demo clean and consistent, so we've decided, as Peter said, to use material design and recreate some of its components to match our needs. And yeah, and the last part, but not least, was to make the demo easy to customize, even at the design stage. The big step here was to wait until Figma releases Figma styles, the great feature to keep your designs consistent and easy to customize. Let me show you my screen. Let's move to the wireframes part. Can you guys see it? Can you, Pavel, say?
Yes, I'm seeing it.
Yeah, okay. So what you can see here are the wireframes that we did after the research part. And we've also did a mobile part where interactions will play a big role. More about wireframes you can read in our document that we created on the Sylius project. So after wireframes were ready, we've decided to share it with you and asked for feedback. We received many comments on the components that we've created and some sections. And after the feedback, I've applied the corrections to the actual prototype that I will show you in the next part of the presentation. So these are the wireframes that we did. As you can see, the layout is really simple. We've used well-known patterns from the shop that I've previously mentioned. These are the wireframes. You can see in the next step of the presentation, this will be recreated for the mockup, and this is like for the mobile part. We've also focused more on like interactions where users are adding the product to the shopping cart or browsing through categories and subcategories or applying the filters. So yeah, these are the wireframes, but let's move maybe to more interesting part, which is the prototype. I've translated the wireframes into this mockup using material design components, but changing them to suit our needs. What you can see here is are the user flows and overall style I did for the demo. Let me click through it to show you the state of the prototype. So this is like the home page. For example, this is the button to go to the offer, and you can select the product. You can see that there's like a place for tabs or like for the descriptions, specification. We are also going to implement reviews. You can go straight to the shopping cart, and from the shopping cart to the checkout. So this is like our checkout process. And you can also create the account after the checkout process. We thought this is a really cool idea to implement it after the checkout process for the guests. After someone creates the account, he sees the page of the account where he can edit his details. We have also designed the about page where you can place all those cookies, informations, and privacy policy. Yeah, so as you can see, it's a simple prototype which will serve as well to catch mistakes and problems at the design stage of the process. Our next steps will be filling this with some content like images and some copy. And we need to test it with the users. It can also save a lot of time in the future when, for example, front-end part was completed and then we spotted mistakes. So it's very important now to do a content fill and test it with the users, and then repair the mistakes that we did, for example, at this stage. So at the and the same process will apply to mobile part, but first we need to check how desktop version will work. So now comes the fun part. This is the customization of the Sylius demo. So we can customize the theme with Figma styles at the design stage. And with Figma styles, you can quickly change the styling I did for Sylius demo and apply your own brand colors, images, typography, and so on. So let me show you how it's done. For the purpose of this demo, let's assume that our client is Zalando, and we need to quickly change Sylius styling into Zalando 1, so the client will know how the shop will look after it's ready. So you can go to the customization tab, and as you can see, we have like color palette, typography, elevation, iconography, shape, and the components that were used to build the demo. So each of these components you can change, and it will change throughout the whole system. So I've took the palette from Zalando and typography. They use Arial as their main font, and these colors as their accent colors and the main color. So their main color is this one. So let's place it in our demo. Maybe close this. So we can easily customize the color over here. For the purpose of the demo, I will change just 3 colors to show you how it will work. The rest of these colors can be used for hover states that will be designed after the user testing is done. And of course, you can change all of these surface and typography colors, the grays and blacks and whites. But it's up to the brand styling guide which colors you can use. So we've changed the colors. Now let's move to the typography. So the typography styles that I've used throughout the whole system. So let's change it to Arial. Let's just change some of this. The body. Buttons. Okay, so when you look at the Zalando page, let's go, for example, here they have these buttons that are shaped like a rectangles without border radius. So let's move to the shape part. So this is the div block shape. It is the where the content will be placed. It has 4 corner radius, so let's go with 0. And this stands for button and input shape. So let's also change it to 0. As you can see, now components change its colors, typography, and shape. It starts looking what Zalando has. And let's maybe change the logo of Sylius to Zalando. It's also really simple to change it. Just a couple of clicks. And the one for the checkout flow. Okay, as you can see, now we have the styling for Zalando, and here comes the trick. Each component that you've seen previously is now changed to match the Zalando styling or other styling that you want to place it here. So let's maybe add some image elements and typography elements. So let's assume that, for example, here you want to place a banner that new glasses collection is coming. So let's type this in. And let's place the image inside our component. Let's go with this one. And you can also crop this to match your. And we can also change the button to say, let's shop now. You can see that the button is now, the text in the button now is stacked. So you can go quickly to the master component, make it wider, and now it works fine. And the same goes for example, for the product carousel or the category carousel. Let's just quickly add an image, for example, of this shoe over here, and you can also change the text over here. Yeah, so this is how it's done. As you can see, in roughly 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we've just recreated the whole Sylius demo. Let me present how the prototype looks. It already has these connections that we had previously. So if you want to show it to your customer, you can easily show how this shop will look after you did the recoloring and the styling. So you can now see that the styles of Sylius of Zalando is now applied to each component. Yeah, so Figma is the software that you can use in real time with your teammates. So for example, one person can do styling, other one can make a content fill with images, and your copywriter, for example, can change the text. All of this in the same time. You just only need internet connection and a browser. No need to install anything. It always works in a browser, and there is no need to use it's system independent. So you can use it on Windows, Linux, or iOS, and no need to install anything. So yeah, this is like the main idea to make it quickly customizable, so you can easily change the content, and after one day you have prepared the prototype that you can show to your client. And what is more about Figma, what's really interesting, and I think that it will save a lot of time and money in the future, but we should think how we could implement this. Figma released its API, and maybe in the future we'll manage to connect Sylius Frontend with Figma and make the process of styling even faster and money saving. So as you can guys see, let me go to the full screen. Here the guy has like a front-end elements inside the browser, the colors and the texts. As you can see, he's going to Figma and now duplicating the element, changing the color, renaming the component, and now he refreshes and it's already in inside the browser. So I think that this feature would save a lot of time for the front-end developer to just change every thing that designer did, and after we could implement this, it would work with our demo. But yeah, this is like the future. We need to think how we could implement this and ask for some help from community to make it happen. But I think that it could really serve us well. So we'll send you all the links to all the stuff that I talked about today after the webinar is complete. And yeah, so that is all I have for the Sylius demo design part today. And thanks everyone for watching.
Awesome, thank you, Mateusz. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's worth adding that these changes that you do to the components, like border radius, that's corresponding to the SAS variables, right?
Yes, that's true. It's like connecting the components that we have designed in Figma to the front end part. It could really save a lot of time, but yeah. For me as a designer, it's a black magic. So yeah, you guys need to.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I think before we go into the new topics, like before we go into the discussion that we planned with the topics that we have outlined in the agenda, maybe you can give us some questions and reactions in the YouTube chat so that we can comment and respond. Maybe you have some questions to everything that we have mentioned so far. In the YouTube. There is a bit of delay, so we will need to wait for the questions. Yeah. What about single page application? Well, what we did so far was focus on the UI and UX and building the design using the design system. So we are in the front of our next step is to actually decide how do we take this design and make it the default one, or at least available as Sylius frontend. So the question of the decision of whether it will be a progressive web app, so a single page application, or a multiple page application. So the way we did stuff for years now and the way we do it currently in Sylius by default. That's something we hope to decide after this webinar with some your input.
Mm-hmm.
Peter?
Yeah, my sense on this is it's to the largest part, it's uncorrelated to whether or not we do a multi-page or a single-page application and how far we take it with the single-page progressive web app approach. So these are UX patterns, and they are to a certain extent maybe like hover states and state animations. That is intermingled with whether or not it's a single page or multi-page application. But the general patterns, they stand constraint whether or not it's multi-page or single page. So up for discussion now is choosing the tech stack and how far we can take it. This will depend, I think, on the amount of contributions we can get from partners, like human resource contributions, financial contributions, whatever contributions we can gather, and whatever team we can assemble to get this job done will greatly impact the tech stack and the reach of the effort in the short term. So. Anyone else with a question regarding the existing UX research, or shall we switch to discussing part of the tech stack and some of the ideas we had on moving it forward?
Yeah, I heard about the effort with Vue Storefront Connector. We don't know what the status is, but yeah, maybe we dive into Vue Storefront in a moment. But from our research, the thing is that if we could take Vue Storefront as a base and adjust to our information architecture and to the user experience that we have designed and to what Sylius has actually to offer right now from the core, then it's an interesting choice for us. But we would definitely need a lot of flexibility and probably reuse more of the foundations rather than full Vue Storefront. At least that's our conclusion so far, I guess. Correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, Mateusz, but
yeah, I've been looking at the code base for Vue Storefront for the past 2 days, and one of the things that I had some doubts about is I like the idea for a single-page progressive web app to have offline UI states, but I'm not sure if doing the entire product catalog in an offline NoSQL database is actually needed and is not like over-engineered. I think it would be sufficient if we have single-page application structure, so client-side routing and offline UI states for catching network errors, so that we don't have a flash of white screen or a network connection error. So we keep the UI consistent, and then we inform the user to reconnect to the internet. But I'm not sure if the entire NoSQL offline data state is actually needed and not over-engineered. So doing a single-page application with client-side routing and then hooking it up to the Sylius API instead of putting in an entire offline client-side NoSQL data store. Not sure if that's not over-engineered, but that's up for discussion. Depends on what direction we want to take it. Please, maybe give us your insights on how to move it forward. Also, should we go with a Vue implementation, or should we depend on web components, native primitives? That's up for discussion. I'm inclined to go with Vue because of the user adoption and the ecosystem, the growth of it. So it's easy for people to pick up. But I don't want to put. I would shy away from putting too much dependencies on a single JavaScript framework, because they all go out of fashion, and if we over-engineer the effort in one specific framework, it might be harder to for future iterations to work with it. There's a comment.
Yeah, especially that the JavaScript world is moving quite fast, so something that is top front-end framework now might be outdated, and we know how risky it is from our side to depend on something that can be out of fashion. So the vendor lock-in issue is even bigger when it comes to choosing the front-end framework, I think, and generally front-end libraries in general. It's a bit more risky than depending on Symfony, for example, right? Which doesn't seem to go anywhere, but towards growth in the coming years.
So currently, I'm more inclined to go with something that has an offline state, UI state, and that has good loading indicators and skeleton screens, so that it feels snappy to the user, and there is a graceful degradation that informs the user, hey, you lost your connection, please reconnect. Because also I think when you put all the products in an offline NoSQL client-side cached data store, and then they can browse through the store, but eventually checking out is impossible, because checking out without an internet connection is just impossible. So I'm not sure if that part of the engineering effort of Vue Storefront is actually needed. And as for the UX UI of Vue Storefront, I think the effort we're doing now has deeper UX research and is more generalized and more expanded than what's currently available in Vue Storefront. But
and most importantly, it's also aligned to, from the very beginning of the process. We have made sure to align with what Sylius has in the core in terms of functionality and what kind of features we are adding right now. So it's I mean, from what I've seen, there is nothing in Vue Storefront UI in terms of features that it doesn't have right now, but still, it'll be definitely easier to adapt to the design that we have built to Sylius. But regarding your question, Mikołaj, like the decision is not made yet whether it will be a tweak design. If we see little excitement and interest from the ecosystem in contributing efforts to that, then we will most likely just go with tweak, because that's, like I said, we don't have currently at Sylius company, we don't have a front-end developer. We are hiring one, but yeah, I mean, this will take us a moment right now, and to onboard him and introduce to the project, this will also delay everything. So we are counting on the support of ecosystem. So if there will be a company or multiple companies who want to pitch in some of their front-end developers' time to make this effort happen as a SPA or progressive web app, then perfect. But if we resort to standard tweak rendering, then it's the tweak that we go for, basically, if we don't have these resources. That's the reality that we need to face, basically.
Yeah, I think there's three options maybe. One is going Twig, the Twig multi-page application, and then one is going the very hard and maybe over-engineered Vue Storefront route. But there might be a way in between where we do client-side routing, so single-page application, client-side routing, and some basic service workers and a web app manifest, so they can install the app, and we have offline UI states. So that wouldn't require over-engineering the NoSQL data store, because Vue Storefront, as far as I understand, their code base and their architectural decisions, is made so that it's platform agnostic. But as Pavel says, the demo that we've been engineering so far is based on available API endpoints in Sylius. So we are not trying. I don't think we have the same goals in trying to do a front end that can adapt to whatever backend is suited. So that's an engineering choice that is made with Vue Storefront. But I think with the Sylius demo and the Sylius front end that we're doing, we would focus on Sylius API and maybe cut some corners left and right, so that it's a single page application with client-side routing, offline UI states, and a web app manifest that's directly connects to the Sylius API, instead of putting in between API adapters and NoSQL storage. But
yeah, especially that it's already possible. So there are production websites that connect directly to the Sylius API. They have some rough edges when it comes to performance of the product listing, because of the shop API that we have right now is basically serializing a lot of data. So
I think stuff like that, because as far as I understand the documentation from the Vue storefront, they chose this NoSQL approach for performance reasons as well. But I think this can be solved by caching the API responses in a reverse proxy, and that would be just as performant, I think, as having a client-side data store. So caching the API request, the API responses in a reverse proxy could be just as performant, and maybe less of a technical challenge or engineering challenge as far as the front end is concerned. That's just sitting. It would be a simple reverse proxy sitting in between the Sylius API and the front end, and the JavaScript front end that caches the API responses. So I think as far as performance goes, that should tackle that could tackle the problem sufficiently.
Yeah, maybe let's slow down for a moment and leave some space for questions or reactions. Anyone else has some questions to Peter, Mateusz, or me, or some reaction about what we have shown, so that we can use it as a point of discussion? Basically, I think you should feel free to just write down any comments as we speak. Don't wait for us to finish or anything, especially that there is a delay. So the sooner we get the messages, the easier it will be to respond. Yeah, so the Vue storefront option is definitely interesting. I mean, we always would rather reuse something that is existing, but I guess we would need to definitely have some input from the team, and see what we can actually achieve, what we can gain from reusing what they have built so far. Yeah, regarding admin user experience. Yeah, I mean, obviously, admin is also, we are aware of some of the UX issues with the administration panel. I think, in a sense, it's actually much easier to redo than front end. A few less SEO issues, although there are still some. I mean, for me, the main concern is something that also happened with Easy Publish, for example. They went with full-blown SPA. They went with full-blown SPA for the administration panels, and suddenly developers with years of easy experience, they were not. They were having a hard time to add a mini position in the easy admin. Of course, there was a few other things involved, like using the Yahoo UI, which was deprecated before they even finished. So yeah, there was some extra problems on top of that. But basically, one of my concerns, because the easy answer would be, yeah, we redesign administration panel, we go with something custom, not semantic UI, or maybe we do it like with Google Material Design. That would be consistent with the front end. And we do a React application, single page application for the admin, which would most likely provide far superior user experience. And I'm all for that, although we should think about the skill sets of developers in the ecosystem. I know we should evolve, and agencies should invest in their front-end skills, of course, but we also need to be cautious to not, make the typical backend developer hopeless when it comes to customizing. I see that on concrete projects happening right now with Zulu, for example. We are helping one company to build a Zulu and Sylius application right now, and customizing a full SPA is getting tricky. Even though it's based on Symfony, you're kind of stuck as a backend developer on the admin area. But our focus is right now the front end. When we finish with this effort, we take a look at the administration panel, definitely.
I want to answer the question from Stanislav. you're saying that designs are nice for showcase, but questionable how easy it will be to reuse on custom designs. So the idea is that if your design, I think if your design requires overhauling the entire UX UI, then there's not much of a point in reusing it. Then you just start over. If your budget allows for overhauling the entire design and starting over and doing something completely custom, or your the business case requires this, then it's okay. The idea would be that what we put forward now as a demo, it doesn't have opinionated UX design choices that are very specific to one niche. It's generalized. So every store needs a cart, needs a checkout. The patterns are to the maximum extent they are generalized. So customizing it would be, I think, non-trivial. But given that you have the Figma design source files, it would allow for you to easily explore any customizations with your client and get approval on and sign off on a further iteration before actually customizing it. So it would the Figma design source files would help you work with your customer in customizing it, unless of course it's the entire architecture of the demo is non-suitable to your business case, the business case of your client. Then you can toss it away and you can start over from scratch. So.
Pavel, you are muted.
That's a good point. I was muted, sorry. Yeah, what I was saying is that I think it's worth noting when it comes to customization that as we have went for a ready-to-use design system with Google Material Design, all the elements that you see, like buttons and so on, are components, both in, they will be components both in front end and in the design phase. So basically, if the UX is completely, if your project, I wouldn't say it depends on the budget, because having the budget doesn't mean you actually need to spend it on completely revamped UX. I would focus on the actual requirements. So if your niche has very unique requirements, or just the business has requirements for a completely custom UX, then you can still reuse, even reuse Figma as a tool, the components, the base components that we provide, and basically, sorry, I'm streaming from home, so it's someone's ringing the door. Yeah, but so you can reuse a lot of elements of that already, even if you need to throw out the entire homepage and maybe the entire main menu, and the information architecture is completely different. But still, how many variations of a My Account section you can have? So some parts would be still reusable, and this would give you a lot of flexibility.
So also for layout, we're basing the layout is based on the material design research as for layout and columns goes. So reusing that system and shuffling stuff around shouldn't be too much of a problem. Maybe Matthias, can you give an insight onto how easy it would be to reuse components but reshuffle the layout?
Yeah, so in Figma, let me maybe show you my screen once again. In Figma, you can easily change the layout. As you can see, there is like a column grid over here. You can easily move things around. You can switch the sections around. It's up to you how you will use it on your shop. As for the grid over here, you can see that there is like 12 column grid, 24 pixels gutter. It's all taken from material design, and the mobile part of the design will also be based on material design grid system. So yeah, it's up for your customer and designers how we'll decide to move the things around. Each component you can easily customize the component however you want. So for example, you can let's maybe you can add pictures, you can swap the sections. You can add more of the components. I think that we should, if it's like component based, each component will be customizable and ready to be placed in each component. What you can see over here. So in Figma, you can completely change the colors, typography, iconography, and shape. And I think that this will save a lot of time for the designer also to customize each component, because like components like buttons, radio buttons, accordions, they are pretty now existing in each e-commerce shop. So the purpose of this demo was to make it easy to customize the single element, and also easy to show to the client how the design will look at after the styling phase is completed.
Yeah, with my current state of knowledge, it's difficult to think about more customizable setup than you have right now, if the requirements are really unique. But I still believe within this range of 1 million up to, let's say, 50 million online revenue yearly, there's so many things that can be generalized and optimized. That's what we try to do with this effort. So while there will be definitely custom requirements, still I don't see what we could what at this point what else we could do. Like I mean, click to install and customize an admin. This is out of question, and this works for small stores, like you said. If that's not enough customization, then configuring it like in WordPress is out of question, in my opinion. So yeah, I think this basically, like, Sylius is providing a solid foundation for the backend. This one is providing solid foundation for the front-end design and iterating on the design. Maybe starting from something that is very in line with this design, just making the branding and swapping the layout of the homepage and a couple of things on the product page and so on, and then iterating on it slowly as you grow as an organization, taking it over and making it more custom as you see fit.
We also have user flows for this prototype. So it would be, if you really require customization, I think you should start at the base layer and first iterate on the user flows with your client to see how, if, for example, you require a totally different checkout flow. Something that, for example, comes to mind is that if your store has a specific specific checkout flow that offers the option to check a delivery option in the cart, for example. That's something we don't support out of the box, because Sylius has in the backend does the calculation of shipping costs based on the delivery address and stuff. So if you, for example, have a store that only services one country, and you know that the product is in stock, and you can offer them on checkout already the option to have it free delivered or have it delivered on schedule the next day, or even the same day scheduled delivery or something. So if you can offer these kind of options, then you have to do a small alteration to the cart and checkout, but that's not throwing away the entire system. So I think small iterations are possible. If the divergence between what you need and what is provided is too large, then you have to toss it away, and then they have to toss it away. But in that case, you can still reuse the micro components, so the atomics in the design system. So yeah.
Ideally, I'm looking a lot into the future right now, but ideally, like Sylius plugins could ship with, you know, the backend plugin, so Symfony bundle that extends, that captures the domain of this extension, and also the front-end components to encapsulate that function in the front-end UI, and maybe even Figma. I don't know how feasible it is from perspective of how Figma works, but also like these design components that. So let's say you need to. There is something, some functionality that we don't consider a core functionality of Sylius. It's a bit too niche specific. And still you can have a plugin that provides you with the same experience for designers, front-end developers, and back-end developers. I don't know, maybe Mateusz, you can shed some light on, is it possible to import stuff into Figma, like have a reusable component that you can export to a file and then import to your design? Or
so yeah, you can easily import the designs even from Sketch. Figma is still working on approving the elements exported from Sketch, but yeah, it's really easy to export those elements and little rework them in Figma and then reuse them inside the Sylius demo. So it's all about setting up the style at first and then applying it to your custom components.
Matthias, do you think you could quickly show, for example, some of the user flows that we did for checkout?
Yeah, so let me show.
Because this is reasoning that we also intend to ship with the demo.
Yeah, so we'll provide you guys with those blocks of the user flows. You could use those blocks. For example, you can use the block to present the homepage and those arrows to present to your clients how the user's flow would look. This is like this will be all like available inside Figma files that we'll deliver at the end of the project. So yeah, it's as for the customizing the flows and your shop, it's really best to start with checking this out first at creating user journeys and user flows, so you can easily see what the sections and flows will look. So we've preferred like the flow for the checkout at first and general flow for the whole site. Yeah, it's really important to, if you are going to customize your shop, it's really important to start with user flows and then creating the wireframes. And after this, you could use our Figma components to create your custom design elements.
yeah, so do we have some other reactions or questions that you would like to discuss? I'm especially interested in the SPA versus MPA approach from developer perspective. Yeah, so something that we need to discuss is the migration path from the existing design to the new design. I mean, for the stores that have went with a completely custom user experience, and that's a large portion of Sylius shops right now because of the UX, the current UX that we provide, then I think they could reuse this this design system in their future iterations of the design. And I think we should consider like how the upgrading of this design works, because from what we discussed with Peter and Mateusz, that would be a continuous effort. So as we learn as an ecosystem about, and as new patterns and new general e-commerce patterns appear in design, we would like to iterate on that. So Mateusz, could you? We didn't discuss it before, so I hope you're not surprised. But could you shed some light on like how? I mean, is there any way to upgrade these Figma source files? Like, let's say someone we release the packages right now. Someone designs their store on top of it. We do an iteration. We introduce 5 new components, let's say, because now Sylius has some feature out of the box, and we iterate on the design. Is Figma leaving some giving us an opportunity to upgrade?
Yes, Figma has like a feature that is Figma library, and after we can create a public library for our Sylius partners to use this file. And after, for example, I do some changes to the components, it's just easy, one click, and the changes will appear in the file that we've created in Figma. And we can do even this in old-fashioned way. We can upload those files into GitHub repository of the design files for Sylius demo. So yeah, it's easy to make the changes and show them to whoever is using the file.
Yeah, so that sounds really good. That sounds really good. I like upgradability. And Mikołaj, you mentioned that smooth update to the new tweak. Yeah, so I mean, this is still up for discussion, but with many, I think getting this new design into Sylius, into default installation that we have right now, would be already a huge boost, and making it SPA can be can take a bit more time. So my question, something that we can discuss would be, let's say we stick to the tweak rendering in the first iteration. Maybe we also give some time to Sylius to make sure its APIs, especially the shop APIs. And let's say we go with tweak rendering. Still, the state of JavaScript right now in Sylius frontend is, I would say, very bad. It's, I mean, it has been improved recently by some great contributions from the community, but still, it's jQuery stuff. So let's say we build new tweak, we reuse the tweak templates that we have. We just adapt them to Google Material Design components and so on. And what about JavaScript? How we could, meet somewhere in the middle to have some of the, maybe already use a framework while not being full-blown SPA. Peter, do you have some thoughts on this?
Sorry, my sound was off. Yes, I am in favor of using as many web native primitives as possible. So shying away from as many single page application frameworks because they all go out of fashion, but native primitives stay around. For example, Vaadin, it's I don't know if you know the company Vaadin. They're all in on web components. They just released a client-side router that is fully web component based, and for example, stuff like that could help us set up a single page application architecture without going all in on a certain specific technology. Maybe I can post the link in the YouTube chat. So it just came out. Posted in the YouTube chat. So for example, this is client side. Oh, I can't paste the link. Yeah, just search for Google Vaadin router, and you'll get to it. It's framework independent, web components native support, and I think whenever possible, we should try to use as many web native primitives as possible, and not over engineer in any specific technology, either React or Angular or Vue. because over-engineering it in one specific client-side library framework, that immediately ups the burden and the UX developer experience for people that are not fully up to speed with a certain, like everyone knows, the same thing goes for JavaScript. In the implementation of the front end new demo, we could say that we go for TypeScript. That would be greatly beneficial because of it would catch compilation errors at compile time instead of them becoming an issue in the runtime. But that will require everyone to work with the new demo to be up to speed with TypeScript. So there is a fine balance that we need to strike between introducing specific frameworks and tooling, and on the other hand, making it so that developer experience is we don't put the bar too high so that junior or semi-senior developers are afraid to get started with the project. So it's a fine balance that we need to strike, and I think it's up for discussion once we finalize the team of developers that will help us implement this effort.
Yeah, so I think it makes sort of sense to actually give us some time on the back end to make the APIs a bit more mature, to maybe consider, because the current shop API doesn't really follow any specific industry standard. It's an API done in JSON. It has some RESTful aspects on some of the endpoints, but on some completely no. And we had some issues with the amount of data that is serialized, obviously. So we are now in talks with guys from API platform, and also talking intensively about considering, either going for some standard in JSON, like JSON API, or considering GraphQL for the future Sylius APIs. And I think that would make the whole SPA approach much simpler. Right now, I would think we try to tackle both things at the same time. So after some of your feedback, I'm leaning more towards sticking to Tweak, just investing some time into reconsidering how we do the JavaScript, basically, so that we don't need to redo it again if we move forward.
Yeah, but we'll any of the other contenders, viewers of the webinar, because I noticed Stanislav and Nikolai are the main viewers that put in questions. Any of the other viewers have any questions or just general feedback?
Well, from Sylius perspective, together with Mateusz and Peter, we have designed the demo with the features that we already have in Sylius. So there is pretty much nothing that would need to be removed from the design. I think we'll go, with basically the version that we have showed you right now. Of course, after some iterations. Yeah, I was very conservative on promising new features. So there is pretty much everything that we already have. Even though we work right now, the core team is working on stuff like refunds, returns, credit memos, invoicing, reordering, admin order creation is pretty much done in the admin area. So there is plenty of new features coming. That being said, some of them are not that visible in the front end. So I would say it will be pretty much one-to-one to the design. I think there's nothing stopping us from doing so.
question from Nikolai, when will it happen? That will depend on greatly depend on the participation of the entire partner ecosystem. I think both when will it happen and how deep the effort will go as for front-end implementation will greatly depend on partner participation. So anyone up for spending their 20% time into this effort is There's a few benefits of getting involved with this effort. For one, you get to influence the direction this is going. So whether you like Twig or single page application, or you want a specific element in the tech stack, if you join the effort, you get to influence it. The second benefit would be that if you're an agency and you have a developer that is contributing his human resources to this effort, you have someone in-house that is fully up to speed with the latest iteration of the Sylius shop API and the front-end implementation. So kickstarting new projects based on this implementation will be easier if you have an in-house developer that is fully up to speed with the effort. And you will also get everyone involved will get visibility and show expertise, so that should grow you some leads into after the demo is published. We will give credit to everyone and visibility to everyone involved. So that's an and yeah, just for the love of doing open source, everyone is welcome to contribute. So those are, I think, one of the main takeaways, benefits of getting involved now. You get to influence it. You have firsthand experience with it. You get visibility of contributing, and you get to show expertise in implementing the demo.
Yeah, when the questions about the timeline and when it will happen pop up, it's time for our pitch. I agree. For a pitch on why it makes sense to contribute. Like Peter said, being on the front line, it has some risks, of course. I think the best way to move forward with that would be to eat our own dog food. So testing it out on real projects, which comes with some risk, but also with some reward. Because being the first and up to speed with the new effort is clearly a competitive advantage, assuming that this is a success. And having an influence. Yeah, we are very open to feedback, and generally, like we said, we have limited resources when it comes to front end. But I also believe that the amount of effort needed, especially if we go with Twig approach, is not extraordinary. So if anyone is willing to contribute some resources, then definitely that would give you some influence over the direction, obviously, because we are on the front end side. We are to a large degree depending on the contributions from the community and ecosystem. We as Sylius, we are now investing a lot into areas like Sylius Store and so on, and we already also and we are heavily focused on the backend development. So yeah, for us it would be difficult now to pitch in a lot of resources for the front end effort. So we are looking for help from the ecosystem, basically. And for the, like Peter said, for the open source, I think what we are building with Sylius is already the coolest e-commerce framework, the most efficient e-commerce framework that is out there, and it's completely open source without some license fees for using it. And I think it's a very good investment to push the front end part forward and make it on par with the level of backend that we have provided. We are 10 minutes. yeah, we have 10 minutes left in the webinar, so I would say let's wrap it up. There are not many new questions coming. There's one from Stanislav. Yeah, we wanted to gather some feedback from the webinar and see your reaction, questions. I will definitely send you some short, Google form after the webinar to gather some feedback about the stream in general, but also the Sylius front-end part, and we will definitely send a summary of the stuff that we have shown in Figma. I tried to share as much as possible before the webinar so that you can have a look at the designs and so on, but there are user flows and a couple of other things that we'll share, and maybe make a list of next actions or tasks that you could take on as a contributor to this effort. So it will be clear of, yeah, well, we will provide you a clear answer to the question, like, I'm interested, I want to contribute, what do I do next? Yeah. So, Peter, do you have anything else, or we wrap up the thing, Mateusz?
No, I think we've addressed most of what we wanted to put forward in this webinar. I'm as you, I'm really looking forward to the replies on the forum and the feedback. And yeah, please take this into your company and discuss it. I'm not sure if they can rewatch the webinar. Is it recorded? Can they?
Yes, it's recorded and will be automatically uploaded to YouTube. I will either leave it as is or download and maybe quickly edit to make sure the sound is good and add some fancy intro or something. But it will be available, and I will also share a link for everyone to rewatch it. Just I would say, just don't share it outside of your companies. We will get the entire community involved very soon, but the first steps are a bit easier if the scope of feedback input is a bit narrower. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the feedback. We are really looking forward to continue to work with the community. This is, for us, this is a continuous effort, and UX UI has a big impact on e-commerce conversion rates. The tech stack will as well, because the ease of use and speed of use is a big driver of a big conversion driver, combined with good UX patterns. So for us, this is a moving target. We are looking to provide continuous effort into working with the community for providing UX and UI. Maybe we'll also get involved in the backend in a later stage. But let's first get something out that is that surpasses the current demo and puts Sylius back in the front of the competition. So.
Yeah, and I would like to thank you again, Peter and Mateusz, because you have invested a lot of time and effort into this project, and yeah, it was quite a journey to this point, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Thank you, Paweł.
Yeah, so thank you everyone who joined us in the chat. We will, I think the chat will be still enabled for a couple of minutes after we go offline. I think that should work. So we'll also stay in the chat for a moment if you have some other questions. I will also send the form in the chat and also via email to the emails that you have subscribed. If there was anyone else joining you on the webinar who didn't subscribe for them on the landing page, then please share the form with them so that we gather more feedback. Yeah, so thanks for your time, and have a good rest of the week. Enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you,
guys.